This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. This is episode 109, and it's key ideas for starting your side hustle with Cory Peppler. My goal is to help you create a compelling future for yourself in an encore career, or as I like to say, become a silver entrepreneur. I will also share ideas on how companies can connect with talent that you can provide and create value for both you and them. I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode, and you can use that as a tool to capture notes as you explore the ideas that we're sharing today. And if you're considering or starting an encore career, please take the self-assessment quiz to help you create some quick clarity around your possible choices. Today, we're going to be talking with Cory Peppler. Cory is a teacher, a friend, a colleague, and has had great experience in getting started in an encore career before you've actually left your existing career. Some of the questions we'll discuss with Cory include how he went about creating a side business. What are some of the things he considered? How did he make it fit in? He also did an interesting thing, creating a virtual summit. So we'll talk to him about how that worked and what that meant for him. Then Cory has some great insights on rethinking your resume, how you have to think differently from just the positions and titles that you may have had in the past. And finally, Cory will talk about the importance of networking, even before you start your encore career. Welcome, Cory, and it's great to have you with us on the show. I'd like to start off by just having you introduce yourself and let us know where you've been and what are the things you're working on these days.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm honored that you asked me onto the show. So I am a teacher, and I've been an educator for 27 years. And sometimes that's classroom teaching, and sometimes it's other supporting roles, like I've been a library media specialist. I've been a technology integrator where I coach other teachers on how to use technology in the classroom and in their instruction. Probably about 15 and a half of those years, I have been a classroom teacher, mostly high school level. So I've been an educator in a lot of different roles for my entire professional life, really. Started to feel the edges of burnout a couple years ago. And actually long before that, which is one of the reasons I left the classroom and went into these other roles. But I went back into the classroom thinking that I wanted to get back into that role as well, but quickly realized that this wasn't the right path, and it definitely wasn't the right school for me. Just as I was starting to think I needed to move on into something else, that decision was made for me and my position was eliminated. And so I found myself in June suddenly where I think I'd always wanted to be, but just not quite that suddenly. And I wanted to do it on my terms, but that doesn't always work that way. And so I found myself unemployed. Then at that point, I just started to lean heavily on some things that I had fortunately already started to put in place. And we can, I'm sure, get into some of those and talk about those later. But that's where I am right now. I guess I'm technically unemployed. I do have a couple of projects going, but in terms of having a quote unquote stable full-time job with benefits, I don't have one of those right now. So that's where I am.
Thanks, Cory. And I'm sure you'll be looking for new opportunities. Maybe someone will listen to this and give you one. Who knows?
I wouldn't turn it down.
Well, Cory, we've known each other for a while now, and I know that you really started on some of these activities while you were still working. And I'd like you to kind of let us know, what are some of the things you started on even while you were still holding down a full-time job?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things actually, probably back in maybe 2013. I think that's when I started doing a little bit of editing. There were a couple of fellow teachers that wanted to write a book and they needed an editor. And so, of course, who do they ask? A former English teacher. And so I got into editing just by accident that way and decided that I loved it. And I edited a number of books for that author/publisher, as well as I've gone on to do a number of other books and then editing a lot of shorter pieces too. I also, just being a writer and an English teacher, I got into doing some copywriting and did a little bit of B2B copywriting for some companies. I especially doing ed tech companies because that's just my wheelhouse from my professional world. And I just feel like I can speak their language. So I've done some B2B copywriting for them. None of it is a lot or full-time in any sense. It's just a project here or there, but it did force me to put together a website, put together a portfolio. So I have, a few pieces there that I can point to people if they say, oh, you do some writing. Can I see some of your work? Sure. And I can just rattle it off and I can point them to somewhere. I'm not proud of the portfolio. It's not beautiful and shiny, but it's a portfolio and it's a place that I can point somebody to. So I have that already set up. And I do continue to do a little bit of copywriting and a little bit of editing along the way. And then the other thing that I did back in about 2015 is I started a blog that came out of a personal passion of just hearing parents, in my role as a library media specialist, just hearing parents talk about technology in their kids' lives and how frustrating it was and how overwhelmed they were and how they didn't even know where to start. And I was getting kind of standard questions. What's the best filter I should install? And how do I keep my kid from accessing inappropriate stuff? Or I was just getting the same questions over and over. And I thought there's a need here that's not being met. And I'm by no means an expert digital parent. Please don't look at my kids as the best example, but I know enough and I know a little bit more. I'm a little further along than some of those parents who feel just totally out in the wind, clueless, don't even know where to start. And so I've been able to help them at least know where to start. So I started a blog back in 2015. I've done a little bit of speaking in relation to that, a few speaking gigs, mostly just pro bono, but I've been able to do that. And I have started developing some courses and some YouTube content and things like that, just on the beginnings of that. But the point is, I have a foundation. I've created a blog. I have a foundation. I have an audience, a bit of an audience. So it's the seed of something that could continue to be developed into something bigger. Those are a couple of the projects that I've been working on.
Also want you to mention a project that I remember you worked on that I thought was pretty remarkable, and that was your virtual summit from a couple of years ago.
That was fun and painful. That was a good project. I decided kind of on that same line of, I don't feel like an expert in this stuff, but I do feel like I know enough to be helpful. I also began making some connections with other people in that niche, people who were speaking to parents. And maybe it wasn't directly technology, but maybe it was. And so I started connecting with a few people and got the idea because I'd attended a number of them. And we have a mutual friend, Jonathan, who encouraged me to do that. And I reached out to a number of them and I got, I think 15, maybe 16 of them to agree to an interview. Just like an interview like this, we did video so that I could run it as a video. And then I put all the pieces together and it was something I'd never done before, but all the answers were out there somewhere. And I was able to figure out all the pieces, what emails to send when and how to invite people on and how to offer a all access pass that was a premium and all of that stuff. It was all things that I didn't know, but answers that were quickly accessible. And I put together a 5-day, I think it ran 5 days. It's 3 speakers each day for 5 days. I did a little thing at the beginning and I had about, I think 1,500 people signed up for it. And a number of those bought the all access pass and I was able to pay for a piece of software for a year with that. So it was, not only was it great for just bringing people into my world, but it also forced me to create some relationships that I'm in contact with those people today and we still keep in touch and help each other out.
Also, Cory, I think it really helped you develop your audience. You got a whole bunch of people on an email list. You have people that you could now talk to. I think some of that happened too, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think I had about 170 people on an email list, and that had been 5 years in the making, just not really doing much. And so I started with that. When I started promoting, I had a Facebook page and I had quite a few people on that, but they weren't really that active. But I was able to leverage that and use that to invite some people. I didn't spend a whole lot of money on Facebook ads or anything like that. I just invited the people that I already had contact with. They spread the word. And so I went from, 170 to over 1,500 in about 5 days because it was a burst of, okay, the summit is coming next week and sign up now. And so I went from a very small list to a healthy list. And so, that was exciting.
I think too, Cory, it's interesting because you did all this while you were still in your full-time job. So while I'm sure it wasn't easy, you were able to manage putting the pieces together as well as you said, you had to learn some of the pieces even.
Mm-hmm. I did. I did have the benefit because I was a teacher at the time. I did have the benefit of a little bit more free time in the summer. Obviously, there was still all sorts of in-services and prep work and everything that teachers always do, but I was able to control my time a little bit better. So I did a lot of the prep work for that though, while I was still teaching and finishing up a school year. And so I started some of the outreach and collecting names and doing research of who are the people out there that I should be inviting and writing the sort of the email that I would send. And I had a lot of those pieces in place by the time summer rolled around. And then I was able to send out emails and respond to them and schedule people for interviews during the middle of the day when it was convenient for them rather than just for me. And so it did help to have a little bit of that time. But it's certainly something that you can do if you're careful, if you can do it in the evenings and the weekends. And you probably just have to give yourself a little bit more of a ramp before you actually run the summit, but it's certainly doable. And lots of people have done it while they have day jobs. And it's a great way to bring together experts in your niche and connect with people. It's also a great way to, I think somebody once called it the Oprah effect. And it's the idea of, I might not be a real expert in this, but I can connect you, audience, with a bunch of experts. And I think that's what a virtual summit can do, is it makes you helpful and valuable to the people you want to serve because you're going out and finding the people who can definitely help that audience. And I think that was the fun part. That was the exciting part about a virtual summit.
And I could appreciate, I guess, it's one of those things I know, again, in some of the groups we've worked together on, it's always been stressed that people want to hear our voice, whatever our voice is. And even though in this case, you brought them together with a lot of what you felt were experts, I'm sure some of them still like, I want to go back to Cory and hear his voice on this subject.
Mm-hmm. And again, those relationships that I formed with some of those people, I've leveraged in a good way when people then reach out to me 6 months later and ask me a question. And I'll say, you know what? I interviewed a guy during my summit and here's what he said. And so I can offer them help and I can be helpful to them and give them the answer that they need right then. They didn't have to come from me. And it wasn't out of like my hard-won experience. It was just this great conversation that I had with this person 6 months ago. And I can still use that information and it can be helpful to others.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I've learned in this entrepreneurial journey, sometimes it's important we know how to do some things, but it's also important we know who does things, whether it be some of the technology questions in my case, or whether in your case, you were asking other experts to help weigh in their area of expertise. So that the fact that you could curate that whole collection of knowledge together, I think was very helpful to your audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was.
As you think about some of the specific things that you had to learn without getting into too much of the details of technology, but what were some of the things that you had to learn as you embarked on this journey of sharing this knowledge?
I don't think any of them are past tense learned. I think all of them are learning. They're still, they are still just, I am learning a lot. I'm continuing to learn a lot. One of the biggest things I think has been just all of the aspects of marketing. I'm an introvert and it may not look like that when somebody comes up and talks to me, but I am an introvert and putting myself out there, asking somebody for a sale, even just asking somebody to join my list, any of those are just challenging for me. And so I've had to really do a lot of work with mindset in terms of what I'm really doing when I'm asking somebody to buy my course, that I really am offering them something that's going to help them and it's going to be transformative for them. And so rather than thinking of it as selling and I'm asking for money, what I'm really doing is I'm offering to take them to the next level. And yes, there's a price for that, but I pay for things like that in order for somebody to take me to the next level. And I don't resent it for them. I think, wow, this is awesome that you put this thing together for me. This is great. Of course, I'll pay you for it because it's going to move me along my journey in this thing. I want to learn guitar. I wouldn't expect anybody to give me free guitar lessons. Maybe the first one so I can try them out. But beyond that, I expect to pay. This is a premium. You have some expertise and you are going to take me along on a journey. I am certainly going to pay for that because I want to go there. And so trying to put myself into that mindset of getting away from that icky feeling about selling anything, or even just asking somebody, asking them onto my list, asking them to sign up for a freebie and give me your email address. Even those things were really challenging for me. So I've learned a lot about marketing and ethical marketing, marketing for introverts. I don't know what to call it, but I've learned a lot of those kinds of techniques. But more importantly, like I said, the mindset behind it. That's been one of the big things. And I've actually fallen in love with that process. It's interesting to me. It's getting in a bit to the psychology of what marketing really is and what it does and what a transaction is, and the whole idea of reciprocity, that if I do something good for you, that you're going to feel not obligated, but you're going to be much more likely to want to give something back in return. And that's an exchange. That's a human exchange. And so it's all of those kinds of aspects of marketing. That's one of the biggest things that I've had to learn over the past few years. And then I think the other big thing is related to that, which is just the struggle to reach out and ask people for help. Either helping in a sense of, I don't know how to do this, can you show me? But more than that, just reaching out to people. Do you want to be on my summit? Or I hope to do what you're doing one day, which is have a podcast. Just reaching out to people saying, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? Just right now, because I am still trying to keep all my options open when it comes to what is my career going to look like in the next month or 2 or 6, I'm trying to reach out to people at ed tech companies, because if I'm going to work a full-time job, I would love to work for an educational or ed tech company, because I feel like I can give back to my industry and help fellow teachers that way. But that involves reaching out to people and saying, hi, I just want to get to know you. You're a decision maker at this ed tech company. I don't want to ask for anything. I just want to get to know you and ask some questions. And like that kind of networking is hard for me and for a lot of people I know. But the introvert in me just doesn't, I just want to hit the easy apply button on the LinkedIn page and have it all happen without having to talk to somebody. It just doesn't work that way. That kind of learning how to do good networking, learning how to develop relationships that way has been another big thing that I have had to learn, not only for my blog, but also for pitching clients for copywriting, but also for establishing some relationships that maybe could lead to something, maybe an introduction to somebody who's making a decision or who's looking for a person like me or whatever. So those have all been challenging things that I'm still learning.
You talk about mindset. I can think that I would be terrified to stand in front of a high school English class. Yet here's something you've had a lot of experience on. So, yeah, mindset probably has a lot to do with how we approach things.
Yes. And I think it is important that you go back and you look at things that you've done. So I can tend to fall back on that excuse of saying, well, I'm an introvert. And when I say that, people say, how can you be an introvert? You've been a teacher. Like every day of your life, 7 or 8 times you stand in front of a group of people. Okay, but that doesn't make me an extrovert. That exhausts me in a good way, but it exhausts me. I rejuvenate by going and being alone. That's how I refill my energy. But when it comes to opportunities as they come up, when it comes to jobs as they come up, or projects as they come up, or even making a transition like I'm trying to now, one of, I think, my dream roles right now would be to be an instructional designer, somebody who creates all of those trainings that, those horrible trainings that are out there. I want to do a good job and do some good ones. But the e-learning kind of modules and things like that, tutorials that teachers can use to learn a tool, those kinds of things need to be designed. And those are instructional designers that design them. I would love to do that. One of the things that a program that I went through that kind of taught the rudiments of instructional design, especially for teachers. And I think this can apply to anybody who's making a career transition, but especially for teachers. One of the things that they walked us through is an exercise where you take your existing resume and all those things that you did in class and you translate them into the instructional design world. And so it might be something as simple as you don't say students, you say learners. Okay, that's simple. That's easy. But then you also have to think of bigger things like presentation. I think one of the things that we forget as teachers is that we are pretty skilled at presenting because we do it multiple times a day. And you don't think of yourself as a presenter, you think of yourself as a teacher. And yet, if you asked me to go into a room and present on some material that I'm reasonably knowledgeable about to a group of adults, I wouldn't hesitate. That wouldn't even faze me because I do it all the time. But you don't always think of that. You don't always think of yourself as a presenter or a public speaker. And so I think it's important that you look at what you have done in your existing career or careers and start pulling out what are those skills? What's the skill set that you really have? Not what did it look like in that particular role, but think about it as a transferable skill. What could it be in a different role? So for example, one of the things that's really key to being an instructional designer is having a really good sense of project management. You very often are the one who somebody says, hey, design this training. And you're thinking, okay, that means I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to talk to these people and I got to hit this deadline and blah, blah, blah. And you think, well, I've never done project management before. Really? As a classroom teacher? You do it every single day. You do it every unit. You do it every lesson. You do it every semester. Our whole lives are project management. We've just never called it that. And so to see the skills that we've developed in our past life, our career and our professional world, and even like in our volunteer world, in our service at our church, in the thing that we've done with the Boy Scouts for 3 years, like whatever it might be, there's transferable skills in there that we can take into the next chapter. And I think it's really important for all of us to do that. I mean, it's important to do it from a mindset standpoint, because otherwise you think, oh, I can't do that. I can't. Oh, I see a job and it's like, I don't have that experience. You really need to think more broadly to say, no, I could absolutely do that. I am definitely qualified for that position. But then on a practical note, you probably also need to do it to polish your resume. We always say polish our resume. And a lot of people think, oh, that means I need to go in and add that last job that I haven't added because the last time I didn't have that job. So I just need to add a job. No, you need to rethink the whole language of what is your resume going to say to this new employer that might be in a different industry, that might be a totally different role. How do you convey that future value to that next employer? And that's an exercise that I've had to do. And it's been really valuable, not only because I have a resume that I can hand somebody, but it just gives me a better attitude and mindset towards other positions that I probably would have dismissed before.
Sure. And I just think of the things you've described. I tend to think of it as maybe in today's world, we're not doing resumes as much as we're doing portfolios, as when you mentioned some of that. And I think you mentioned maybe your ideal job would be instructional designer. But then I think, boy, you could weave in your copywriting skills. You could weave in your technology training skills. All those things could certainly weave together along with your obviously deep experience in the classroom. I think that would be true of all our audience, that we're no longer just talking about our job titles or things like that. We're often talking really about what's the problem I can solve for this potential new employer or this person that might hire me.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think I read something, I don't even remember where it was. Somebody wrote something about the best companies don't hire positions, they hire people. So you think about what can you bring to us as a company? And that what you can bring is not going to be a single-minded skill set anymore. Here are the 3 or 4 things that I can offer you. Here are the things that I could, if you hired me into your organization, you would have, you don't want to say, I'm the Swiss Army knife, I can do anything, but you can say, look, I'll do this role, but if you needed somebody to pitch in, I could do this. And if you suddenly needed to move some people around, or there was a different need that suddenly came up, like I could do this. And I think presenting yourself as that more multifaceted person makes you more valuable. And that's what it's all about. It's showing your value to a prospective employer, not so much this is what I've done in the past. And that's what resumes used to be. And so if we can get away from that and start creating documentation that says, but this is the value I can be to you in the future, I think you have a better chance.
Yeah. I remember many years ago, I served on a school board, but in one of our conferences we attended, the people have said, we're trying to educate people for jobs that don't exist yet. 12 years from now, the jobs, we may not even know what they are. So I think that's just true as we think of our own careers, that we're preparing ourselves to do work that may look very different than what we did in the past.
Sure.
Presenting ourselves so that we are flexible and willing to learn, I think is critical.
The pandemic showed us that in the world of education. There were teachers that have been integrating technology into their classroom and using online portals and using online portfolios with their kids and having kids blog and doing online quizzes and you name it. They were doing that all before we got shut down. What is it, 18 months ago? Feels like 18 years ago. But when that happened, those teachers, it was a shock to all of us, and it was having to completely relearn the way that we do things. But for a lot of teachers, it took 3, 4, 5 days and they were up and running. It was hard and it was stressful, but it wasn't, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. How am I supposed to? I've been teaching this way for this many years. I don't know how to make the shift. And it was telling. It was really telling to see a lot of teachers just went with the flow and were able to start leveraging tools in ways that they hadn't before. And others really choked. And a lot of that is just preparation. It's what have you been preparing? How many experiences have you opened yourself up to in the years prior to that? Yeah, flexibility. Flexibility is a key.
Yeah, I think that would be key in anybody starting an Encore career or second career, especially moving forward. Even if you want to hold on to the job you've got, I think demonstrating to people that you're flexible can be very helpful because you can't be executing yesterday's solutions over and over again. It just won't work in today's world.
Definitely.
As you think about your experiences and your journey so far, and obviously you taught students, any other ideas you might have as far as when a person is either preparing for an Encore career or starting one, what are the first steps you might recommend they focus on?
And this is borne out by a bit of a regret, I think, but I would strongly encourage anyone who is thinking that transition may be coming in the next year or so is to start networking now. Like, learn how to network. If you don't have a robust LinkedIn profile, there's plenty of resources out there for how to create one, what to put on it, how to word that description, summary, how to put portfolio pieces on it if you have them, depending on what you're trying to do. But get that LinkedIn portfolio up and healthy, and then start reaching out to people now when you're not reaching out to them to say, excuse me, can I have a job? But reach out to them now when that's not part of the conversation. And it's just, hey, I just wanted to connect with you. I saw that we had this in common, or I'm just trying to reach out. I've reached out to a lot of people in the ed tech world. And I've just said, how do I phrase it? I usually phrase it something like, and always include a note when you connect, by the way. But I've just said, hey, I'm just trying to connect with some of the people in the successful ed tech companies that I've used as a teacher. And that's very true. I'm reaching out to ones that I've used. I've used them or I've taught them before. And so there's a bit of a commonality, and I'm just trying to connect with you. And that can lead to hey, I've got one really quick question. I'm just wondering if you have 10 minutes for a phone call. And the whole time you're just connecting, you're just creating a relationship. You're sending them valuable stuff. Here's an article I saw. I thought immediately of you guys at company XYZ. Just thought I'd share. Or you are making a comment on a post that they made that's more than just great post or something like that, or thank you or whatever. You have the freedom to just create relationships. And then when the time comes that you start to head into that transition, or like me, if that transition comes suddenly and as a surprise, you will have a relationship, a healthy network that you can start to gently tap for possibilities. And I'm finding that now I started doing that in LinkedIn with people, creating relationships, but not as much as I should have, and not nearly as much as I should have. And so now I feel like I'm playing catch up a little bit. And I'm dancing that fine line between, am I trying to create a genuine relationship here with this person? Or am I just schmoozing so that I can quickly pivot and ask them for a job? And I don't ever want to do that. So the sooner you can do that, the better. That would be my biggest piece of advice. Because yeah, all the other stuff you can learn. I decided back in January, I really dug a little bit deeper into the world of instructional design and really didn't know much before that, and thought, do I have to go back and get a different degree? I already have 2 master's degrees. I don't need another degree. Please don't make me go back to school. So how quickly can I learn this? I learned it quickly. I took a little course that taught me. I read a few books on it, and I was up to speed on the basics of instructional design pretty quickly. So that kind of stuff, like, unless it's a really technical, if it's a medical field or it's some heavy engineering field or something where you do need more knowledge, you can get knowledge pretty quickly. But those relationships and that network that you're going to need to tap, that has to be nurtured over time. So the sooner you can start, the better. I think that would be my number one piece of advice.
Absolutely. I have a good friend and a mentor that said marketing is really about opening a relationship, not closing a sale. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there saying, yeah, you want to be out there opening relationships with people. And eventually, at some point, there'll be a time when you can ask them for money for something. Thank you so much, Cory. I really appreciate this. It's been a great honor and a privilege to have you. And again, I think this is going to be of great benefit, especially your discussion around, hey, how do you reframe all those experiences you've had in life and make them part of your portfolio or your resume? Because, and again, in today's world, the fact that you will say ran a girls softball league or something like that, or was president of the church council for 4 years, all of those are skills that people need and find valuable. So I think we always have to step back from just the old, here's my title and here's my job description and those things, and start, as you said, putting those things in a bigger context. I think that was a great insight that you shared.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. How can this thing that I've always done be applicable to the next thing that I want to do? It's all about applicable, transferable skills. And we all have them. And we all have a lot more than we think.
We'll also share any contact information you want to share with us in the show notes for the podcast, so that if people want to reach out to you and connect with you later, we'll make that available for them. Thank you so much, Cory, and have a great day.
Thanks, Lynn. It's been a privilege and a fun conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Again, our thanks to Cory for some fascinating ideas for people developing or starting their Encore careers. In summary, some of the questions we discussed included how he went about creating his side business, how he developed and hosted a virtual summit, how you should rethink your resume beyond just titles and positions that you may have had in the past. And then finally, he talked about the importance of networking now, even before you start your career. Also in the show notes, we'll have the resources such as Cory's website and email. And if you're considering or starting an Encore career, please take the self-assessment quiz to help you create some quick clarity around your possible choices. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.